All right, welcome back. So back in the Peticha, in the opening of Shearim BeTefila Dalit, Ha'etza Ha'ikarit, the
Hang on
advice,
for a minute.
the main advice um, that we have, Eich La'alot Madregot HaTefila, how to ascend levels in prayer, La'asig Ba Kavana HaRu'uya, and to appreciate the proper intent, it's something radical, and that is that we should invest time in our day to engage in prayer in addition to the time that we engage in prayer. We should be focusing on tefillah, preparing and understanding our tefillah, like we're doing now in this shiur, in addition to the time that we're dedicating to Shacharis, to Mincha, Marav, etc. When you are davening, you have to daven well. It's not, as we saw, it's not simple to just jump into, open up a sitter and focus all of a sudden, especially today with all the buzzing and ringing. You can't expect to walk into tefillah and suddenly be prepared. That requires special time to focus on the cleansing of one's heart and understanding the topics that one is studying. We find that this idea is brought out by Abraham, and this is in Bereshis Yudchet, that based on Rashi, he treats prayer as if it were a war. The prayer is dependent upon the preparation that goes into it. A war, rather, is dependent upon the preparation that goes into it. You can't walk into war and then say, okay, now we're going to sharpen our blades, and now we're going to get our weapons ready. If you do that, you've already lost the battle. Whether that happens or not, in other words, in the meantime, while you're sharpening the weapons, the enemy is going to win, and it's going to be too late. The same thing is true with prayer. If you think you're going to just waltz into prayer and just put in the effort in that moment, and you're going to somehow put forward a proper and appropriate prayer, you're not going to have the proper intent, and you're going to lose the prayer. It's going to be lost altogether. We're in the middle of page 28. A person, instead, what should they do? He lilmod bisfarim uma'amarim hamiyachadim et hadibur al itorut bekavanat hatfila b'kvoitim izmanim kivul mazeh. That we should set up time to study tefillah. Lilmod et ma'amarim b'cheshek b'tefillah nefesh, and to study these ideas in the books that discuss prayer with hitpa'alut nefesh, with a sense of desire and uplifting of the soul. And you shouldn't just pick it up once a year. You should actually have a Seder. Just as you have a Seder where you study Gemara, you have a Seder where you study Jewish law, you have a Seder where you read a certain book, where you engage in a certain activity. You should have a time dedicated in your day. And the classical Muslims all talk about organization and being structured. That especially I find this very helpful in my training when I'm training to run a certain distance. That the main thing is if you gain 5 pounds, you're not going to be able to run as easily. You're going to have injuries, you're going to have neck pain or foot pain or ankle pain. So the best eitzah is to get healthy with the food. And the best thing to do with your food is to have a set meal. Bali must talk about, imagine eating the same breakfast every single day. It sounds boring, it sounds horrible. One of the things when I'm training is I try to have the exact same thing every single day, which is, 5 fried eggs, a lot of bread. No, I'm just kidding. I try to have like whatever it is. It's like a yogurt and granola, or or just a similar bowl of cereal, or even just whatever it is, but the same thing. Not to do less, not to do more, but if you have a kavios, if you have a set seder in things, it organizes your life. The problem is certain souls get bored with routine, and you have to know yourself. You have to know that routine can really undermine your spiritual growth. But he's saying that just as you have to have a routine in all of your learning and all of your physical activities, you have to have a routine in your prayer. And that means that routinely set up a time every week or every day, whatever it is, to just focus on prayer. The Hasidim, Breslov in particular, have an activity known as Hitbodedut or Hisbodedus. Hisbodedus means to be alone. And the word for quarantine is bedidut, right? You're in quarantine. But the Hasidim talk about this, that one of the most valuable ways to grow as a person is to spend time on your own. Take a walk in the forest, take a walk through the trees, spend time talking to yourself. Don't have the headphones on, don't have some sort of device in your hand. Just talk to you, talk to Hashem, talk about your life's goals. What are you going to do today? What are your goals next few months, next year or so? We don't even have time for ourselves. So I think that's a great time to focus on tefillah. And he's specifically to learn what is tefillah about, what are the paragraphs talking about. And don't spend too much time, don't have too great gaps between those times. The Clark B'Shari Ora of Itzel Belzer, he quotes here Rav Yitzchak Blazer in the Shari Ora, Shezozhi Kimat HaSiba HaIkarit Shelimud HaMamarim HaMaorim Eino Poel Famim Et Pulato Nidreshet Kem Shishet Sakit Arucha Ben Limud. The reason why when you study things periodically it doesn't work is because the gap of time is too great between when you last studied that discipline, when you last engaged in that. You can't have a gap that's too large, otherwise it will not have the effect you need. The study sessions whose purpose is to arouse the heart need to be continuous and close to one another. Bottom of 28. Lindono, we have a limud, something we learned, a tradition, Rabotenu, from our rabbis. The Kabbalah Mehagra, from a tradition from the Vilna Gaon. Vilna. Mari Salanter from Rav Yisrael Salanter as well, who is the great Baal HaMusar. Shetov Lachazor, and these are two different schools of thought. The Vilna Gaon is steeped in Kabbalistic thought, and of course Yisrael Salanter is more in the school of self-repair, self-awareness, improvement. Shetov Lachazor al Maimar HaMaorer Kampamim, that it's good to review anything you learn several times. Kasher Magila is a Mamar Chazal, when you arrive at a certain statement in the Gemara. Oshar Divrei Musa, Asher Yagish B'nafsho Ki Pa'el Mizeh, V'yachdro Tov Chaver Levavo. This is an amazing idea. It really is. When you find a piece of Torah that speaks to your soul, I don't know about you, but there are certain mitzvos, certain holidays, certain ideas and concepts that just speak to me more than others, right? I've heard this from a lot of people. When you identify that thing, that one area in Torah that really penetrates the depth of your heart, Shiachsor, Yishaneh Oto B'Tpalut Kama V'Kama Pa'amim Ad Asher Hadvarim Charusim Al Luach Libo. Repeat it over and over again until the matter is carved into your heart, into the walls of your heart, or engraved on your heart. V'az gam belechto b'chutz u'b'shachbo al mishkavo. Then even when you're walking outside, even when you're lying in your bed, yitzaltzel ha'amar hazeh. This idea will ring in your ears. Be'oznav kipa'amon, like a bell. Below emotion is zichrono. It will be Pavlovian. You repeat an idea that you know touches you over and over again, it becomes part of who you are. As kasher yigash l'tefila, yeikvar muchan b'palut hanefesh l'grot avodu mitelet alav, kel alav melod kavanah b'palut. We want prayer to be second nature. We want that to be the type of thing you've repeated so many times that it's so clear that it rings in your head all the time. That's what he's suggesting everyone has to do with tefillah. Now I want to just, as an aside, before we go on in this idea about a mitzvah that speaks to you, I think is very important. You all have commandments that like are your commandments. That doesn't mean, I think immaturely that everybody's the best at something. It's not true. I don't think I'm the best at anything. I'm just good at certain things. There's certain things that talk to me, and I have to explore those things, right? It's a myth that everybody's the best at something, right? But nonetheless, there are things that really speak to who you are and are core to your mission in this world. And no one can tell you what that is, but you know what it is. You can figure it out. And if you know what that is that speaks to you, you have an obligation to go into it, to go into that mitzvah. My father always says that mitzvahs that take place outdoors in nature are something that speaks deeply to him. Maybe he likes nature, maybe, but sukkahs, even rabbinic minhagim like tashlich, things that are outside really speak to him. Once every 28 years, Birkat HaChama, blessing on the sun. So if you have something that speaks, you have to find out why. What is Hashem trying to speak to? Because he talks to you through the medium of the Torah. And one of the things we could do specifically through prayer and meditation in advance of prayer is find the things that are most relevant to you. They're usually the things that either keep revisiting you, themes that keep reoccurring in your life, and sometimes traumas, and sometimes difficult people and difficult personalities that keep on resurfacing in your life. That's the medium through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to you and helps you to identify your core mission. So we could do that with our prayer also. We could have it sort of a constant in our minds, that our main tefillah, our focus, so that when we walk in, it's not a foreign book that we lift up and it makes no sense, but rather it's telling over of our heart. Where he's not suggesting you should take away from other mitzvahs or other learning, right? Doesn't mean that if you had a seder each week to study halacha, that you should take away from that time and start to focus in prayer, but find additional time in your calendar, right? We have plenty of time. We've discovered, none of us have any time, but we've all discovered we have so much time to see every meme and YouTube video that someone sends us on WhatsApp. So how do we have all that time? The answer is we can discover extra time and use that time, dedicate extra time for tefillah. There's a story, it's a generic Gadol Hador story, but I think they say it about Rav Moshe Feinstein, but I don't know who it really is about. But that one time they made a big deal and invited a lot of people to a Siyum HaShas. This particular rabbi finished Shas, which takes, if you do a Daf Yomi cycle, it takes 7.5 years. You do more than that, you could finish quicker. He finished Shas. It wasn't really a big deal. This was a particular person who had finished Shas maybe hundreds of times. Maybe went through Shas 10 to 50 times a year. So what was so great about this Siyum? So he explained that this was a Siyum that was completed in all the times that were extra, right? You're studying in the base madrash when you study. So what happened was your chavruta would go and get up and get a cup of coffee, right? So if they got up to go get a phone call or coffee, and you have 2 extra minutes, you're just sitting and waiting for the other person, start a cycle of learning then. It's extra time. So identify the moments in your day that are extra moments, and he finished Shas in all the extra moments. Could you imagine that your chavruta, your study partner, completes thousands of folios of Gemara in the time that you had stepped out of the room? Imagine how you feel when you realize that all that extra time was available at your disposal. So that time is really available to us. Identify the moments in your day that you waste time. Again, videos, the needless worrying, right? The extra few minutes that you push the snooze button. Those are moments that are free to be dedicated towards a good cause. And why not towards tefillah? We dedicate so much time of our day to tefillah as it is. Shacharis could take an hour, could take half an hour, depending upon the day. Mincha Marav, 25 minutes, half an hour, right? Because you we take that and you add in Birkat Hamazon, benching, minimally, we end up dedicating at least an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours every day to prayer. Again, this is in normal world, we're saying everything where you're in an environment or Shabbos, it's hours and hours. Shabbos Yontif Aruchos. Tfilas Aruchos Ka'arba Chameshos, 4 or 5 hours total on Shabbos. An hour at Maariv, 2.5 hours in the Shacharis, Musaf, another Mincha, and then Maariv again. If that's the case, if you're spending hours a day on something, including all your brachot, including all of your benching, you've wasted those 2 hours a day. They will be miserable, they will be unprepared, they will be unrefined, and they will be something you just don't enjoy. Because if you go into it and you've done no preparation, it's completely a waste of time. So we've already decided that we're going to dedicate hours a day to prayer, to talking to Hashem. Why not at least go in there and have it mean something? Otherwise, there's no point. And if you want to know why, everybody wants to know why is the new generation so not engaged in prayer? So they like to blame, well, it's not sufficient spirituality, and you need to be jumping and dancing and singing more. And I love singing, believe me, I really love singing and davening. But it's not that we're not engaging then. The reason why people hate tefillah, right, and it includes me at times also, the reason why we really don't like davening is because it's a waste of time. We've gone in totally unprepared, and so we have no idea what do we want to say. By the time we get settled, we're no longer cold, we're no longer agitated, whatever conversation we just had a minute before davening, right? And then you're also getting a call in the middle. Please pick up the kids or do this or whatever it is in the middle of your tefillah. Because we're so not settled and we're not focused, we're actually wasting that time that we're dedicated to tefillah, and we end up disregarding it and not liking it. It's not because nobody has, lit a fire or used the right tune or the right chazan. It's because we didn't go in prepared. I once heard a beautiful Torah from Rav Simcha Bar Pershiska. It says, "Lo savaru esh b'kol moshe osechem." You're not allowed to light a fire in all of your dwelling places on Shabbos. So what does it mean you're not allowed to light a fire on Shabbos in your dwelling places? Well, it's funny. One time I was attending years ago, we were attending a bar mitzvah of a dear friend of ours, and they were davening at a traditional sort of conservative place. So we didn't feel comfortable going inside. We went out of our way to make sure they knew that we were celebrating with them. This is the aids I give anyone. You have to do something that may be compromising your values. We walked 5-6 miles to get to this conservative place. It was in New Rochelle, from the Bronx. I remember I got a tick on me during, because we had to walk through the woods to get there. And we showed up, and we waited till the davening was over, and we joined them and celebrated with them outside, and wished them a mazel tov. And they knew that we went out of our way to celebrate with this family. Anyway, I remember a conversation the rabbi had with the congregant as the congregant was walking in the shul. The congregant was holding a cigarette and smoking. This is in the days, I don't want to say the good old days, but the olden days when you were smoking inside, outside, wherever, and it was like perfectly normal. And she was walking in with the cigarette, and the rabbi told her, you can't bring that in because it's Shabbat. And she was intrigued. So he explained further. It says, Lo savaru eish b'chol moshe osechem on Shabbat. He probably didn't use the Ashkenazic pronunciation. I used Lo tivaru eish. But anyway, you shall not light a fire in your dwelling places. And he interpreted that meant inside you can't smoke, you could smoke outside, which is an interesting twist. That's not what it meant. It meant you can't light fire on Shabbos. So when do we light fire? Right? We light the fire before Shabbos, as we light our candles. The Karaites felt that you can't even have candles lit on Shabbos because they interpreted literally. So they wouldn't keep the crock pot going with cholent. They wouldn't allow flicking on a light before Shabbos. We turn on our lights before Shabbos, so they're functional on Shabbos. We don't do it on the day of Shabbos. So Rav Simcha Bar Pershiska says that you mustn't light the fire on Shabbos, because if you arrive at Shabbos and you think you're going to turn a fire on then, it's already too late. It's a very profound idea. You want to inspire your family at Shabbos table with Zmiros and with Divrei Torah? You know that you can't walk into a meal if you didn't cook the meal. You can't walk into an experience and expect it to be spiritually uplifting if you didn't prepare in advance. Don't light the fire on Shabbos. It's too late. It's too late to ignite a heart on Shabbos. You had to prepare beforehand. You go into Shabbos and you have to have nice conversations in advance, pleasant conversations. The Medrash tells us that if you don't go into Shabbos prepared from a physical standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, then the angels that accompany you home from shul, Erev Shabbos, they find a house that's in disarray physically and spiritually, then it affects your entire week. And it negatively affects your Shabbos and weiter and onward in the rest of the week. So the Rav Simcha Baruch says, don't think you can go into Shabbos, into anything, and light a fire on the spot. Nobody does that. The fire has to be lit beforehand. So too with prayer. You're not going to light a fire. You spend 2 hours a day of your life are dedicated to tefillah. And you're not going to walk in. It's very hard because we're consumers. Everything we do is ready-made, right? Instant oatmeal, instant soup, instant movie, right? On the controller, instant program. Everything you do requires no preparation today. So it's almost unheard of that there's something that requires prep. But this is true. You really need to prepare for it to be on fire. If you spend 15 minutes, those 2 hours will be meaningful. If you spend 5 minutes, those 2 hours will be much more meaningful. He's saying 20 minutes. Which will turn it into a proper way to pray. Therefore, someone who wants to succeed in prayer. Now, this is the bottom of page 29. So we have to set special time. If you want your prayer to be a prayer with fire, make time to advance to prepare for prayer. And then you will acquire for yourself the desire. If you had an important business meeting, would you ever walk in without preparing? I can tell you that since especially since I became the president of the CRC, if I walk into a meeting and I haven't prepared in advance, I will be killed by my colleagues. Not literally, but because they don't actually want that job. But I will be torn apart. And the reason is because these are busy, successful people who don't want their time wasted. So every single meeting has a proposal, has an outline, has a suggestion. So you can walk in, you already know what has to be done. And everyone who has a role in a board has to come in advance of that meeting, or is supposed to. The one who's organizing the meeting should make sure that they each have their presentation prepared in advance. So nobody's time is wasted. Because otherwise, you end up hating the institution you're volunteering for. Why should I, or even the work you're paid to do? Why should I dedicate my time? If I'm walking in, the whole meeting is a waste. Anything that is precious, you need to work. And then when the Gemara says, if you put in work and you found success, believe that person. And it's always difficult to start out in any discipline. And of course, the worst thing you could do to make sure you take away from any discipline and deplete it of any meaning is to engage in regular, repetitive, mindless behavior. That if you just repeat and repeat and repeat and you don't focus on what makes it unique, if you don't do that, it will destroy it. But if you do focus upon that, it will transform a person's life and it will make it more uplifted and imbued with holiness. And now we move to Hay, Perak Hay in the Hakdama. We're going to go with that. We'll hopefully finish the introduction. Any questions before we go on? Okay. Afal Zot, Aleinu Litbonim. We can focus. Be'eza ofen ercha lanu haTorah et seder yomim. Let's consider how the Torah arranges our day. The mikol avodas haborei, and all of the modes, the forms of serving God, serving our Creator, Tefillah hi inyan shekol Yehudi makdish l'hechachet azman ha'achrit. The most time-consuming activity that we engage in as Jews, God-fearing Jews, is prayer. But let's say you pass a day and you don't learn that day. There are days that we have our weekly shiur. Some of us have a daily seder and learning. But if you passed a day by and you didn't learn, opinion of Rabbi Shearim BeTefila is that if you've already dedicated a few moments to say the Shema in Shacharis and the Shema in Ma'ariv, you've already fulfilled your obligation of Talmud Torah, studying Torah. That's the minimalist vision of Talmud Torah. Even though you've lost a chunk of your day because you have not spent studying Torah, you're not considered a balavera. You're not considered a sinner if you studied the minimal amount of Torah by saying the Shema twice. But a Jew doesn't daven 3 times a day. You're not going to feel like a Jew. What are you? If you don't define your day with the bookends, why are you any different? You don't dedicate time to daven. That's the minimal activity of a Jew every day. Prayer is breath for the soul, breath of the life. It is the service upon which the soul is dependent. It is the air to our lungs. Where do we see this idea? Tefillah is referred to in Chazal, in the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Yud, Chaye Shah Keneged Torah Nikret Chaye Olam. That we call Tefillah the temporal life, and Torah is called the eternal life. What does that mean? Tefillah hi etzem hachiyut shel adam ba'olam hazeh. Tefillah is the lifeline, it's the oxygen of this world. It's the daily physical connection that we have with the source of our life. That's why the obligation to daven comes before any other obligation. Even though Torah is on a higher level than is tefillah, than is prayer, still it's what we do first. A pasuk that is often quoted these days: "You shall surely safeguard your life." We quote this all the time when we talk about the most important things we have to do is stay healthy and safe, and then we worry about everything else, right? Like the primary obligation is first stay alive, and then have a shmor without masks for 300 people. The first obligation is you have to first be alive, right? Or put more succinctly by Rav Soloveitchik, Meis Pater Min HaMitzvos. Someone who is dead is exempt from mitzvos. Technicality, right? So first you have to make sure you're alive. And Chazal thought that physical survival is dependent upon your tefillah, your prayer. Shemiras kiyum haguf, the observance of the survival of one's body, v'chaim ativim kod mechol dama. Of course, Torah is a higher pursuit. As I said from Rav Soloveitchik, but this is a pasuk in Tehillim that we quote on Hallel. Lo ha-mesim yahaluya. Dead people cannot praise God. Right? The technicality of being dead. So you can't do anything anymore. So, lo ha-mesim yahaluya. So because we have to be alive to praise God, hakol nidche keneged shmiras hachayim tefillah. You have to stay healthy. You have to eat. You have to exercise. Move on. Everyone understands that. And everybody understands if you don't dedicate time to take care of your body, you're going to wither, you're going to fall apart, you'll get disease. The same thing is true when it comes to serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tefillah is the essence of physical survival, which connects you to Hashem. Gon da dechsiv mikol mishmar tzor libecha meno totzat chaim. From every single engagement, more than anything in the world, guard, protect your heart, because life results from that. So nitzor libecha, how do you protect your heart? What's the avodas halev? That is tefillah. And he's going to end with one reminder now about dedicating the right time. B'shas esek tefillah, when you are engaged in prayer, the yesod rishon, the first idea, hatzlacha, to succeed, latet lazman hanoikah, to give it the right time, as we said before. Ve'emes davar zehu hakal hatzlacha kol inin shiyeh. This is the general rule for success in anything. Give it time. You need to practice if you're going to succeed at something. Not just if you're going to become great at it. If you're going to be, an amateur, you still have to give it time. One who tries to hurry up, finish something. I reject wholeheartedly the idea that there are people who work well under pressure. I don't buy it. I don't think you work well under pressure. I think you work poorly under pressure. The idea that you're going to, I was always the student who studied in advance, who did homework long in advance. So, and I know that when I have too many things on my plate, I work under pressure and I don't do good work. I'm not proud of what I do. So I don't think anyone does. That's like the people who say that they're good multitasking. They're not good multitasking. They're really good at doing a lot of things poorly. You have to focus if you want to do something well. It's not there's a whole thing about men don't multitask, women multitask. Nobody multitasks well. You're telling me you can work and send an email and make a phone call and cook and watch your kids and pay attention to your spouse all at once? No, you can't. You can't do any of that well. None of that will succeed. Dr. Pelkovitz points out, my wife likes to quote this, that if your children see a cell phone in their line of vision, they know that they're the second most, at least not the first most important thing in the room right now. Because you can't focus on more than one thing at once, and you can't focus on something if you don't dedicate the time to it. So now, we're going to talk about the time of tefillah itself. Problem is we're crunched for time. Because we don't have the proper time in tefillah, it hurts us beforehand, it hurts us afterwards. And we rush through the davening until we get to Shemona Esrei. So we can get to daven the tzibur. Let's say, people always say the tzibur goes too quickly and I can't get the Shemona Esrei on time, and I'm behind. So I'm rushing through Tzibur. It's true. The shul may be davening Sukkot Zimra too fast. So show up 15 minutes early and say Sukkot Zimra. There's no crime in that. Again, in an ideal world, every shul and base medrash should have hours dedicated to it, morning davening. It's not the ideal, and it's not the world we're in. People have to have an end time because you have to get to davening. There has to be a reasonable start time. We were worried about being together for too long because of every 15 minutes. Additionally, it can cause spread of disease. We have to make a cheshbon. But putting that aside, there's no reason you can't start your davening earlier and dedicate that time. Sometimes you end up skipping parts. I'm going to speak so that you can catch the tzibur in time for Shemona Esrei Shema. In Kvar if you get on time, and who decides how fast the davening goes? The chazan. The chazan is a faster davening. Then we're stuck. We have to speed up our davening. And if he schleps it out, then everybody else has the chance to dedicate more time. Again, I'm a big believer in it's nobody else's task to make your life meaningful but you. So you can dedicate more time if you need. Nobody else is, something's wrong, we're going too fast. I understand. All that is true. You have the obligation to dedicate the time that you need to daven in a meaningful and uplifting fashion. Nobody else is going to create that atmosphere for you, and nobody else is responsible when you don't generate a meaningful feeling. It's like that in everything. It's never anyone else's fault but your own. I know I hate to say it, but self-sufficiency, self-dependency. Yeah, there are people who need a pick-me-up every now and then, right? They need their engine started. I get that, right? They need to hear a beautiful sermon, and all of a sudden they're uplifted. They need to download their favorite shiur so they can start their spiritual engines. They need to open up their favorite sefer. They need a cup of coffee. They can start their day, otherwise they can't learn, they can't think. I'm like that. But aside from the emergency spark that we have to give the engine, spiritual success is up to us. There's a border, there's a limit to what can be done. We don't want to appear as if we're seeking high madregot, meaning as if we're pretending that we're holier than we are. The sofa tefillah ma'arim l'tzeit la'asakim chufim, and tefillah, sometimes people are hurrying to finish, they can get out the pressing affairs that they have. They have a job they have to get to, they have a carpool they have to do. And because of that, and they skip things, masha'eno nechshav, chiyuv gamor, kriya shema, that's right. The things that aren't as important, like the shema, and sof davar, and as a result, there is no real time. Zman katsuv katsar, tefillah arucha. Prayer is long, the time is short. Tzarach l'chos harbe bizman muat. You have to fit a lot into a small window. Derech klal ein manus melachtoch mikan mikan. And therefore, you have no choice but to trim a little bit of fat in the daven here and there. And the way the world is, in carry to real thing. You visit a doctor. By the way, we're going to talk about why it's dangerous to cut from your own avodah. I'll give you another running analogy. If I do a long run, so you're supposed to stretch afterwards, right? Some say stretch beforehand, but the key is the post-exercise stretch. So if you skip one of those stretches because you don't have time, right, you're going to be in pain the next 3 days, without a doubt. But if you do the stretch, you'll make it. You'll succeed. You'll maximize the benefit from that run. So really, cutting time off of any endeavor destroys that endeavor. So not only do you have to prepare, but you have to make sure you can dedicate the time when you're engaging in it. So if you visit a doctor, and the doctor, let's say, is a general practitioner, it's not the expert, not the authority of that field, of that discipline. What do they do in the general practitioner? There's a big waiting room, and you're waiting in that area, and then everybody has to get in as a rush. It's an appointment time, and everybody gets a minute of the expert doesn't look at how much time. We went to the expert for our son's stomach problems. The top in Chicago, one of the top in the world, hands down. And I could tell you, when you are in that person's presence, I think I described this before, you feel that you are in the presence of a gadol, a great person. Okay? And here is the main trait of a great person. When they are with you, they are solely focused on that. Now, the truth is, they can't focus on everyone. He told us he can't take every case. He only takes the unique cases, right? That's like me. I'm a rabbi, but I'm only a rabbi for characters. You can't take all the cases because you're focused on the arichos, on the discipline, and not on the quantity. It's not wholesale care. So therefore, not everybody can get in. And the waiting room is not packed. And it's not the same idea. You may have to spend months reading. You have to see 10 different people before you see the top of that discipline. But that's the one indication this person is the authority. You can't assess, you can't make a real diagnosis unless you have time, unless you can experiment, unless you really can ask the questions that need to be asked, not be distracted by the need to punch a clock or the need to fill a quota of patients. Right? You don't put the top investigator in the police force on being a meter maid and writing tickets, because their job is to make money, additional money for the state or the municipality, and the job of the top investigator is to research forensics, is to research a case, is to look into a history, to look into patterns of behavior. I don't know. I watch a lot of TV, so I think they're all like these profilers, but they're not. So the rest of they just eat donuts and drink coffee. So the rest of Ian Verikus. You need someone who can be doresh, who can darshan, who can focus, who can zero in on the issue. And if you rush them, people want service that's quick, right? But I want good service, and I'm willing to wait for it. And so I know in the dental field, because I come from a family of dentists, there are a lot of dentists out there who understand the patients don't want to sit in a chair for a long time and have their teeth drilled and be in pain. And so they want the quick fix. And sometimes the quick fix is the wrong medicine, right? Sometimes you could save a tooth, the actual integrity of what God created in your mouth. But it's going to require repeat procedures. It's going to require hard work, flossing and brushing, and maybe special mouthwashes. And it's going to require maintenance and a little bit of fixing here and there. But if you could save the basic structure of a tooth, you've preserved what a Kadosh Baruch Hu made, which is a lot better than what man makes. But everyone wants quick service. Just knock it out and give me a beautiful, shiny, pearly white tooth, stick it over there, and I don't want anything left. And it's cheap. And it costs you a lot more money. And ultimately, it doesn't take an expert to do that. It takes an expert to preserve and to spend time with you, to care for what you have. Well, someone who wants to not focus, wants to rush through, that person's not an expert. Now, sometimes you don't need that, right? You don't need an expert to make you a cup of coffee. Although Starbucks has convinced the world that it's like this artisanal, fancy thing. I don't remember who. I think it's Jackie Mason had a great routine about the Starbucks experience. I can't use the word, but it's a Yiddish word that begins with the S. But he says, all these guys, they're you know what's, and you go there, and then you want a cup of coffee, you spend $5. You're the fool. And then they don't even put milk in it. You have to go there and get your own milk. And then they put there, and you got to get your own sugar and this. You're working for them, right? But they give it a fancy title. It's not making a coffee, it's a barista. And I'm not belittling, by the way. Any honest work is beautiful. It's honest, it's holy. I'm not belittling the parnasa. I'm saying that sometimes we turn a task that isn't really one that requires discipline and focus, and we turn that into a big deal. On the other hand, by the way, and I'll take a step back now and criticize myself, I think that everything that you do, if you do it with care and focus, it's much better, right? It's true. So even coffee. But that being said, there are certain things where we recognize there's a need for focus. One wise sage was asked, how long should one dedicate for your Shemona Esrei? And he responded, until you finish. That's how long. Kama nifla hagdara zu. How wondrous is this hagdara, is this definition? Echad hamarech ve'echad makatzer, one who lengthens and one who shortens. You shouldn't sense that you're cutting off the time that you need. If your heart dictates that you should spend more time, great. Shorter. If you need less time another day, another shorter. Don't be distracted. Don't feel like you have to get somewhere, like you're missing out. Whether it's during your tefillah, whether it's after tefillah. Klal Hatzil, you know what distracts me, by the way, is focusing on what other people are doing. And by the way, it's hard because sometimes I realize that the chazan has to wait for me to finish my esrei to start. I end up, when I'm working, I end up doing a shorter Shemona Esrei than I'd like to do, right? That's a hazard of the profession. But I get distracted when I try to focus on what other people are doing. I get cynical. Oh, the disingenuous person who puts their hands in the air and closes their eyes. I think they're so insincere. I think they're a bunch of liars and phonies without me. Don't focus on other people. You get cynical. Focus just on you, as if you have a wall around you. One meditation I do for tefillah, I learned this a while ago from one of these Tai Chi experts. And there's a meditation. You sit down and imagine all of the things that are disturbing you, right? So you build, and you're sitting down, and you start to build a circle, a wall, a brick wall in a circle around you. And as that thing is threatening to get in, you build a wall a little higher so it can't get in. And if something else is trying to seep in, build a wall a little higher, a little higher. You can imagine now you're sitting within like this circle, this cylindrical shaped wall that doesn't allow access, the outside wall. You're unfettered from the outside thoughts that are interrupting your tefillah. And that's how you focus. And that's how you say, it doesn't matter when I finish. Long or short, it matters. No one else thinks of me right now. It matters what, nothing else I have to do. I must interrupt, but I'm focused on it at this moment. When we get to higher levels of tefillah, we'll talk about another machshava, which is the opposite, which says when you're engaged in that moment and an outside thought enters your mind, make that part of your prayer. Turn it into your tefillah. That's a secondary meditation that I work on. So klal tefillah prat shmona esrei olam malei tzitzim prachim. Tefillah is its own world. Kol minei gevanim, with all sorts of shapes and colors. Tzarich pashut zman, and you need time. B'li zman yeshar l'kal. If you don't have time, you're not going to accomplish that. V'yesh kan gam inyan nogeh l'chavod shemayim. And we have something here that is relevant to the honor of heaven. Hakavod hapashut v'yosur she'efshar l'seis l'bishu. If you want to give kavod to someone, give them time. It's a two-way street, by the way. If you dedicate time to someone, they know you care about them. And if you want someone to care about you, never try to chop them on a run. I'm not talking about my running now. Chop them on a run when they're on the run. Don't try to grab them in the middle. Oh, I just need one thing. First of all, it shows that you don't really need their time. And number two, they won't give you the time in that moment. It's very important to recognize space and time, and then to dedicate that time where the desk is clear, where there's nothing else going on. Lubavitcher Rebbe, someone, I don't remember who it was, said that when he visited, I'm trying to remember who it was who said this about the Rebbe, though. When he visited the Rebbe, and it was like 2 a.m. when he got in to see him, he noticed that the desk was completely empty. Such a beautiful thing. It meant that the Rebbe has nothing else going on but that person in front. It's like the opposite of my desk, by the way. Total pigsty. But that's my palette. I'm Bob Ross of Torah. I'm just picking svarim all left and right. But really, if you care about the person, you're supposed to clear your desk. I don't follow that. I'm a hypocrite. But so umiyad all machshavos betefila hayalecha. Sorry, I skipped the line. Ein elban gadol yoser milomar ainli panai b'shtuka. There's no greater insult than to hear that that someone doesn't have time for you. Kol echad makir sargasha zos. We all know what that feels. Hashem mitkabel itzel mishu v'oso echad memaher l'sayim v'nei atorsh b'chutz. And when they're rushing, by the way, sometimes they are rushing because they don't have the time, but it doesn't feel good, right? Acknowledge that maybe they don't have the time for you, but it still doesn't feel good. Kama davars in ma'alid, what an insult. Yad ola machshavos betefila hayalecha shlo kableni. And you think, then why do you even have a plan? I saw a specialist once, and he walked in, and he's quickly, half the time he's focused on his computer, he has to take his notes, because some bureaucrat cares about every note that he takes in his office. He's not even looking at me. And then he walks out. It was like ridiculous. I waited 2 hours in the office for that, like to check a box. I saw him, yep, so the biggest expert. But you know what it's like. You know what it's like when the person doesn't have time for you. Yoshev ani kfar. Lifchot, tain li kala dakot shel savlanut. Please, a couple of minutes. Same thing is true with prayer. We are speaking to God. You have a window, a couple of hours a day. We don't have time. You hear us, we're so rushed to get out of prayer. We don't have time. Choose a few words. I need life. I need health. I need parnasa. I need refuah. I need to be healed. I need shalom. I need peace. I need blessing. Cholz matfilin, borchen. They take their tefillin off. They remove the tefillin. They run out of shul. Where's the derech eretz to God? Machar b'emes. And once in truth, harbe pamim loch sim bisman. Sometimes we are really rushed. How do you fix that problem? The main thing we can do to fix this problem is lavo yoter muktam. Come a little bit earlier. Tefila is scheduled for 7. Arrive a little beforehand, 6:45. It will make a big change to your life. Immeasurable. There's nothing as important as someone who wants to focus on prayer. As in the beginning, when it establishes everything, when you start out in your prayer, you start experiencing this idea that I had extra time to spend with desire and intent, it will always continue. If you start out with the right foot, you will always move forward with the right intentions. When we delay, even a couple minutes, you come late and you rush in, that rushed feeling will continue to influence detrimentally the rest of your prayer. You won't be able to daven the proper intent of your heart. The next chapter, as we begin the next chapter next week, before the first chapter, it's a chapter called Hachana, which is how to prepare for prayer. That was we've introduced now. We say we have to prepare, we have to arrive early. And then after we introduce the idea of preparing for prayer, then he begins his 13 gates of tefillah called Bitzor. So next week we will begin the Hachana, the stage called preparation for prayer. Let me stop this.